I know that a lot of food bloggers are still struggling after the HCU and traffic hits that they had to go through because of the HCU. I sympathize so greatly with you guys who are going through this or who have gone through this. And I'm really hopeful that this conversation today with Nadia from Simple and Fraiche and Christina from Weekday Pescetarian will be encouraging for you and give you hope. Both of these bloggers went through pretty long stretches where their traffic was wiped out on their blogs. One of them went through an 11-month stretch where their traffic took a huge hit, and the other went through a 15-month stretch where traffic was gone. Both of them were able to take a step back and look at their businesses from a fresh perspective and figure out a plan forward so that they could regain traction and traffic. And they did. This is episode number 662. I really hope you enjoy it. I could not be more excited about this chat. It comes from a place of pain, so we are going to talk about some painful things today. However, there's a good ending to these stories from these two awesome ladies who are willing to chat about regaining traffic after a big hit during the HCU. So welcome, Nadia and Christina. I'm so happy to have you guys here, and thank you so much for sharing your stories with us. We truly appreciate it. I'm going to just have you quickly say your name and your blog. So go ahead and introduce yourselves. Nadia?
I'm Nadia Shatila, and my blog is Simple and Fraiche. Thank you so much for having me.
And Christina,
Hi, ladies.
Go ahead.
This is Christina Jolam. I'm the creator of Weekday Pescetarian, and I'm so happy to be here.
Yay! Super excited to have this chat. So as I kind of alluded to, both of you had some struggles during the past couple of years. I know that you've been through a lot with your blogs. It's probably felt a little bit like you just are coming out of war. So we really do appreciate you sharing your stories. And I know a lot of people are going through the same thing. So this is going to really resonate, and your voices, your stories are helping. So just truly thank you. So I think we'll start by just having you talk a little bit about your blogs, your blogging journey, and then kind of what happened to your blog and during this journey up through the HCU. So Nadia, I think we'll start with you. Do you want to go ahead?
Sure. Well, I started my blog in March of 2021. And, I think maybe like most people, I didn't really know what I was doing. I was just putting recipes up on my site and continued on and off. And I work a 9-to-5, so it was really challenging trying to balance both of those things. And I put it on the back burner till around the end of 2022. And I started to just continue to post a little bit more and learned a little bit more about keyword research. And things were going pretty well. I started gaining some traffic, and around August of 2023, I was getting ready to apply for Mediavine. I was so excited. And things were looking good. And then September came along, and I just woke up one day and my traffic had just tanked. I basically lost almost all of my sessions, and would search my site in Google and didn't really find any of my posts. And there I was.
Yeah. Devastating, right? I mean,
Yeah.
You were to the point where you're almost at Mediavine, and then
Yes.
bam, it just hit you. So I'm assuming that all of your, or most of your posts that were gaining traction, that were allowing you to apply to Mediavine, just kind of fell off the face of the earth. Is that right?
They did. I had some posts that just, before I really even started SEO, I had one post that made it into the top spot somehow. I don't know. And that post was gone, along with like all of my other posts that were, on the first page of Google. And they were nowhere to be found, like not even in the top 100.
Oh my gosh, that's devastating. I remember talking to you during that time, and it just felt like, how do I move forward past this? It's such a hard thing, especially when you work so hard, and everyone knows this. Everyone listening can relate to that. We work so hard to get those rankings and to put out quality content, and then to have it just taken away. It's like, how is this fair? What is happening? So I I just so sympathize with what you went through. And then, so September 2023 is when that happened. And then how long did that kind of go on before you started to see a recovery? We'll talk about the recovery in just a little bit, but I just wanted to know, about how long you had to see that, the rankings dropped.
Yeah, I saw a little bit of a bump around November and December of that year, and then March came along, and any traffic that I had was then completely gone, like non-existent. And it stayed like that, stayed consistent all the way until December 19th of 2020. What was last year? 2024.
2024? Okay, wow.
Mm-hmm.
Nadia, that's a long time. You're amazing for enduring that. Yes. Okay, we'll get back to you and kind of where you went after recovery, but I want to talk about Christina, your journey, and tell us about your blog, when you started, and all of that.
Sure. So my blog is Weekday Pescetarian, and my goal is to help home chefs get confident cooking seafood. So my journey's taken me through 33 countries to Portugal, where I live now as an expat with my husband. And here in my little kitchen is where I create foolproof seafood recipes that work with ingredients that folks can find in their local grocery stores, making seafood hopefully more accessible for weeknight cooking no matter where you live. And my story is a little bit different than Nadia's. I started at a similar time period around May of 2022. I had, if you listen to my previous episode on Eat Blog Talk, I had been contemplating a food blog for 12 years. And so I'd had plenty of time to think and plan, and I started with like a business plan. I was going to make this a successful business. And so that's kind of how I approached it. I was doing keyword research from day one. And so just as a side note, it's interesting that we both ended up in exactly the same place, regardless of the steps that we took to get there. So I was accepted to Mediavine in May of 2023, so about 12 months pretty much to the day of when I posted my first recipe. I got into Mediavine. My traffic in that season of Weekday Pescetarian peaked in June, July of 2023 at around 90,000 sessions a month. And about 80% of those sessions were from search traffic, specifically Google, but broadly search. And then September of 2023 came along, and I was hit in that September update. Initially, my search traffic dropped by 80%. So, and from there, it was fairly stable until March, when I lost about 35% of my tiny pot of existing search traffic. And then from there, it was stable, if we can use that painful word to describe the amount of traffic I had. It was stable until August of last year, August of 2024, when I saw a good recovery begin.
Okay. Wow, you guys. Those are both really long stretches of kind of devastation, honestly. I know this is, I mean, it was hard, but just kind of describe what you were emotionally going through during that time, if you don't mind.
Sure. So this is Christina with Weekday Pescetarian. I would say initially it wasn't exactly denial as a mindset, but certainly denial adjacent. I was poring over articles and kind of the armchair expert instant analysis from SEO experts and other bloggers. And because I had never been hit before, I had never really followed what a Google algorithm update was or what was the potential impact. I just thought, well, other people talked about it. It didn't impact me. And suddenly it did. And so at the time, there seemed to be so much chatter, and there were a lot of people that I was reading who were saying, this was obviously a huge mistake. Certainly Google will be launching a new update any day, and it will be corrected, and all of this will go back to normal. So don't do anything. Don't make any sudden movements. All will be right soon, which in retrospect is hilarious and devastating, because that obviously was not going to happen. And so I just had to really take a good hard look at my site and to make some decisions. And the question that I was asking myself was, what do I know to be true about my site? And what I knew about Weekday Pescetarian was that the food, the recipes, were very good. They were well researched, they were put together well, they had been tested many times. So the product I was selling for free was solid. What everything else, though, was on the table for me. So was the writing what it needed to be? Well, as someone who'd been a communications consultant and written for other folks, I already knew the answer to that. And it was no, the writing wasn't where it needed to be, because I had tried to get that A++ and optimized to the maximum. And I had keyword stuffed articles to the point that my storytelling and my blogs didn't sound like me or really any human. And so that was something I had to say to myself, like, that is a place that you can improve. There were some technical components behind the scenes, were my picture sized properly? Did I have the proper feature photos? They were not. Was there alt text on all my photos? There was not. And so there were a lot of things that I had to take a good hard look at and say, maybe my recipes are what they need to be, but also maybe Google's just not out to get me. Maybe there are ways I could improve my site from a user experience standpoint. And so those were some tough conversations with myself.
Yeah, I was going to say self-conversations, right? And then Nadia, what were some of the things that you went through emotionally to start, and kind of how did that go? Yours played out over the course of a year. So just talk us through that a little bit.
Sure. At first, I had no idea what was going on. I didn't even know what a Google update was at the time. I'd kind of heard the term. I didn't know anything about it. And I just assumed, I guess, that it would work out, like that, okay, the algorithm will change again and everything will be fine. So I was a little bit shocked, a little bit confused. And then when I didn't see any changes, I really started to dig in. So similar to Christina, I was like, okay, I better really research this. And I started looking online and figuring out, like, okay, this really is a thing. And how should I assess my site? And I had to take a step back and really look objectively at my site. And I realized there were a lot of things that were suboptimal. And it wasn't necessarily it was difficult, but I felt as though, and I thought as though there are things I could fix. And so I felt that I had a path forward at that time. I'm like, okay, I can try to adjust these things. I didn't have an about me page, for example. I had some empty pages that said lifestyle and fitness that I thought I would fill in at some point, which I didn't get around to. My site wasn't optimized for mobile. So there were a lot of things that I just kind of took a look at and was like, okay, I need to address these things, and hopefully that will help solve this problem.
Okay, so you both were able to step back and kind of look at your blogs, your businesses with a broader lens and say, okay, there are areas of improvement that I can make. Maybe Google isn't the devil. I can move past this. So there was a point where you saw hope and things that you could action steps that you could take. Yeah.
Yes. And it always feels better, I think. And Nadia, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't want to speak for both of us, but it feels better to have identified a problem, but that moment before you have a solution or before you're able to start doing something to address it is such a hopeless feeling. So the minute you start putting a plan together and evaluating, for me, it was still very difficult, but such a relief to have a list of things to do and a list of ways that I needed to be changing my mind and thinking differently about my blog. So it was just a relief to start moving.
Yeah. Once you have the information, I feel like it's always like that, whether it's like a health issue or financial issue or whatever, the period before you have a plan is so hard. But once you have a plan and you have things kind of solidified in your mind, like, okay, this is where I need to go, everything becomes easier. So it sounds like that's kind of the process that you guys went through too. And how did you get to the place? So Nadia, I'll start with you. Where did you find the information? You said that before this happened, you didn't even know what a Google update was. How did you acquire the information you needed to kind of assess and move forward?
Yeah, well, at the time I had just joined your mini mind, and that was really helpful. There were a lot of great people in that group that pointed me in the right direction. I didn't even have a Facebook at that point. So I didn't even understand that you could go to Facebook and find information. So I started there, and then I went into YouTube and put in helpful content update. And anything and everything that came up, I watched probably every video. And then I did the same thing in Google, and I just started to find different SEO experts or people that were speaking on the topic and listening to podcasts. And I just took in all the information I possibly could and tried to find common themes and what people were saying that seemed similar. And that's the direction I took. I didn't necessarily follow like what one person said. I just took a collective of a lot of different ideas that were out there.
Okay, so you did some good self-research. I love it. And Christina, how did you approach that?
It's shockingly similar. It was kind of a fire hose of information where I was so desperate to get some kind of answer of what needed to be done. And initially there were some of the things I talked about earlier, there were some low-hanging fruit, photo optimization, alt text, those kinds of things. But after a certain point, you're thinking there's no way I've lost 80% of my search traffic because I didn't have a 12 by 1200 feature photo on every blog. So like there have to be some deeper issues here that I need to go after. And so same concept, like I was looking, a couple of the folks that I really paid attention to was Marie Haynes, who has a great SEO consulting business. And then your friend Ty Kilgore from Everything Digital Media, Everything Digital Marketing, super helpful the way he thinks about search engine optimization and building expertise and showing it were really helpful for me. And it was the first time I had heard someone talk like that about building a blog, building a food blog specifically. So they were just really helpful resources, but really, I mean, the amount of folks I was listening to like could fill the entire hour we're talking. There were so many people who had thoughts and ideas, and some of them really panned out for me and worked out. And some of them I ran down those alleys and it just didn't work for me, but maybe it worked great for other folks. And so that is one thing I for sure learned in this process is that building a blog, a food blog, doing SEO is not a one size fits all, that there are folks that really speak to you where you are in this point of your journey. And they don't speak to everyone, and it's not going to connect with everyone. But I was very lucky to find folks that I really connected with and that spoke to me where I was and really helped me get where I wanted to go.
And I like that you guys didn't just run and listen to one voice. I think a lot of people do that. Like they'll just decide, okay, I'm going to listen to everything person X says. But I think there's so much to learn about SEO, and especially relating to the HCU, that you kind of need to hear a handful of perspectives to learn what is going on with your unique situation. And it sounds like you guys did that. And maybe that's why you've been able to pull out of the HCU partially. Okay, well, let's start talking about the next step. So you assessed, you made a plan, you gathered information, and then you started to implement the plan. So Nadia, how did that go once you started digging in and doing the things you knew you needed to do?
Yeah, I started to update some posts. I didn't really see much happen. So then my next step was I actually got an audit with Casey, and I had him go through my site and help me fix a lot of the technical stuff, which was beyond helpful. And then he really helped me identify which post to start updating. And I started there, and I just I went with a new lens through everything and updated. I believe I updated about 75% of my posts, and I went through and in 1 month, I think I updated 35 posts, like just wrote them all over. Yeah. With everything new that I learned, and just try to make them the best possible and improve the user experience. And, from there, I just continued to fix all of the little technical things I could. And I really just took the kitchen sink approach. Anything and anything that would improve the user experience, improve my writing, improve my images. I tried to do that. And that's what I spent the majority of the summer up through the end of November doing.
So when you say you looked at your posts with a new lens, with a new lens, how did you do that? Because I think that is so hard for people to do because you're so in it. You created all of it, all of your content. So to be able to step back and see it with a new perspective, how did that go?
It was I mean, I'm not the best writer, so I really went through and I was like, is this information useful? There was some stuff in there that could have been, it was a little bit more redundant. I didn't need to put all of that information in there, or I potentially offered way too many options and substitutions that weren't really practical. And I went through and asked, like, does the user really need to know this? Do these step-by-step instructions make sense? Is everything as clear as possible? I just had a little bit of fluff in there, and then other articles were just really, really thin. And so I had to go through and just really ask myself, is this the best possible information I can put out? Does this help the user?
Okay. I like that. So you spent a large chunk of time doing this. And then at what point did you start seeing that things were regaining traction in Google?
December 19th, to be specific.
Wow,
exactly.
It's a day to celebrate. Yeah.
On
Nadia's
that
day.
date, I was checking analytics every day because I knew there were some updates going on. And I opened my computer sometime on December 19th and saw that I was regaining keywords. And I cannot even describe the feeling. It was the best feeling. I finally felt like all of that hard work that I put in was starting to pay off. And I felt like, okay, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Now, my traffic didn't come all the way back, but just even seeing a couple hundred keywords per day come back was just, it gave me that motivation to just keep going.
Truly a date to celebrate in the future. It's probably a date you will never forget, right?
Yeah,
December 19th.
exactly.
I'll celebrate it with you. Okay, so we'll come back to you. Christina, once you decided, here's what I need to do, talk us through what happened after that.
So I would say that initially my response was very kind of tactical and technical. So there were things kind of on the back end of my site that I thought, oh my gosh, I didn't even know I was supposed to be doing this. Or maybe I'd heard somebody say it, but I thought, well, I've got a ton of traffic. Obviously, it's not an issue. So I built out a spreadsheet, which my husband affectionately called Total Recall. And I put every single blog on my site, which at the time was 260. And then there was a column for all of the different actions that needed to be taken. Was there a properly sized feature photo? Was there alt text? I was putting in labeled ingredient shots for everything, which none of this is advice, I should say. These are just the things that I did. Mm-hmm. And I'm not 100% sure which one or combination of them has corrected the problem.
Yep.
But so I do want to share my experience because it may be helpful for others, but I don't want it to come across that I'm telling everyone they need labeled ingredient shots. Alt text, making sure that my H2s and H3s were helpful and in the right place. Doing a better job with interlinking recipes and creating anchor text. So there were adding notes to recipe cards. There were a lot of technical things that I was looking at. And then as I started nearing the end of that list, and I was not seeing traffic pick up. In fact, like I said, in March, 5-6 months later, I got hit again. I took another step back and said, okay, there must be a deeper issue. This can't all be technical problems. And that's when I really started digging into the EEAT signals that search engines are looking at, specifically Google, and that's experience, expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. And I would say that that's the point where I really started making more of a strategic shift in how I think about the blog and how I think about my content. Like Nadia, I really beefed up my About page and talked about my own journey with food and specifically with seafood. And I now find ways to kind of interlink from recipe blogs to my About page where I can kind of reinforce that expertise. Created and updated those author bio blocks to make sure that I could talk about that on every page. Added some citations and references where it was appropriate. And this was Ty Kilgore's advice at the Flavor Media Summit conference, but to really look at your blog, each blog as its own book. Don't look at your individual recipes as chapters in a book and assume that people are reading through them sequentially. So I can't look at my blog and say, well, on the seared salmon recipe, I already told them I'm an expert, so I don't have to say that again. Yeah. If people have found me through search, they didn't read that one. So in every blog, I have to find conversational ways to establish my expertise and why I'm an authority on this topic for the reader. And so that was a real strategic shift for me. That was not how I was thinking about it before. So that was, I think, a real key for me. And it's something, here kicking off 2025, that's a real area of focus for me as I continue to rewrite old blogs that were just rewritten last year, because I've learned new things. So I want to make sure I'm keeping it as helpful as possible. And also as I create new content.
So at that point, you shifted to EEAT focus. And then how long did you go through that process? I know you're still doing it, but
yeah,
how long was it a heavy focus for you?
Well, in August is when I regained my traffic, again, almost overnight. So I would say that it's a continuing focus, but every single one of my blogs has been rewritten in the last 12 months. And so now I just look at it and say, whether I learn new things about blogging or writing or about specific types of seafood that these blogs are highlighting, I need to be touching these probably every year and adding new helpful information. And so I would say it's for sure an ongoing process, and it can be a heavy lift. And if your favorite part of running a blog like mine is creating recipes, it can be daunting to think the percentage of time now that you need to spend on looking back at old recipes and updating them to be sure that they're valuable and as valuable as possible. It can be a little daunting, but so far it has been worth the effort.
And necessary. I think it's so necessary in this current landscape to incorporate updating old posts as part of your just normal strategy. No matter how old your blog is, I think everyone should be doing that. And this is just proof of that. So I want to reiterate how long each of you spent. So from D-Day to Yay Day, how long was that? And how and how much of your traffic would you say, just estimate, has been regained in that period? Nadia, do you have an estimation for us?
Yeah, for me it was about 15 months. And I've regained, I would say, about 60 to 70% of Google traffic.
Okay. And Christina?
So for me, it was 11 months. And I've regained all of my old traffic and then some. December was my highest month ever in the history of my blog.
Okay, I just got goosebumps. I love it. I'm so happy for you guys. And I have to know, how did you stick with it? I mean, I think so many people would have and have quit because it's just too much. Do you guys have strong connections to your whys and that just really compelled you to keep moving forward? Tell me, how did you keep with it? Because that's 11 months and 15 months is a long time to go through what you went through. Nadia, I'll start with you.
So part of what got me through was while I was working on everything to fix my site, I also I really focused on things that were working too. So I really dove into Pinterest a lot, and that helped. So I was seeing some traffic come in that way. That kept me motivated. And then, I think Christina mentioned this earlier, just having some sort of plan and knowing that there was work to be done kept me going. And I knew that my site wasn't where I wanted it to be, and that kept me motivated. And I really enjoy it. I love blogging. So that also kept me going as well.
Okay, that's great. And Christina, what would you say?
So there were so many difficult moments, but one of the real turning points for me when I was actually at Flavor Media Summit, listening to Ty Kilgore speak, and he had the funniest anecdote about how it's Google's job to police the entire global internet. And in that context, food bloggers represent the coastline of Rhode Island, which, no disrespect to Rhode Island, they have fantastic seafood there, but they are not the global internet. And so his take was really a helpful reframing for me that Google isn't trying to take me down. There's no vendetta against me or food bloggers in general. They are trying to give their global customers the best experience possible on their platform. So then again, I had to look at myself and say, do I want to be a part of that online experience for people? Do I want to participate in this marketplace? And if I do, the price of entry is that I have to stay on my toes, and things are going to change a lot, and I have to stay updated on that and play by the rules of the game as it is today. I can't say, well, I was so good at the old rules, why did they change them? That was not going to get me anywhere. And really, for me, it got to a point where I had to say, hey, if you're not up for it, if it's not fun anymore, you don't have to stick with it. None of us are required to stay in jobs that we find abusive or unfun. So if that was going to be my perspective, I needed to get out. And I don't think there's any shame in that. But for me, the upside of it, the joy I still got out of creating recipes, was worth the frustration of learning all of the new algorithm tweaks and what I needed to do and staying engaged on that level. So for me, it was completely worth it, and certainly in retrospect, a decision I'm happy with.
Yes, I'm glad you guys both stuck with it. So I'm hearing that both of you just came to a place of acceptance, like, okay, this is what has happened. I am not going to fight it. I'm not going to go against it. And then also not blaming. I think that's a huge piece of it too, because I do hear a lot of people place blame, like, this isn't fair. Why would you do this to me? But like you said, Christina, it's not a personal vendetta. This is something they're doing to better the platform. I mean, think of all the different varieties of blogs and websites out there. Oh my gosh, food blogging is like this little minuscule piece of the world, and they have to police everything. That's a crazy thought. So of course we're going to get caught up in that a little bit, right? So I am so impressed by your guys's just values and the way that you held your ground and were able to just have such good perspective through all of this. Is there anything else you would mention as far as what you did to recover traffic? I know that it's not set in stone, like, yes, this, and this equals traffic recovered. We know that, but is there anything else that could play into the mix?
Nadia, I wonder if we chat a little bit about, like you mentioned briefly, some of the things that were working for us before, and so maybe some of the things that we focused on while we were frantically trying to fix our sites to recover. And for me, like Nadia, it was Pinterest. Pinterest had worked for me really well and continued to work for me really well, even when I lost most of my search traffic. So that was part of it for me. I think during this really down season with traffic, I was forced to think about my business much more holistically and realize I could not rely on Google traffic, search traffic as my only revenue producer. That was just not going to work long term if I wanted any kind of stability. So that's really when I started thinking more about building my email list. That's when I started thinking more about developing brand partnerships that made sense for me and for my brand. So I developed a portfolio and sent that out, and now I have some brand partnerships that help to offset costs associated with all of the work that we do. So it was a good opportunity for me, even to your point, Megan, from a place of pain and fear, to say, what else, if I was helping someone else build a strong business, I wouldn't tell them to put all of their revenue eggs in one basket. So how can I diversify what it is that I'm doing, both from a traffic perspective and also from a revenue perspective? And so it was a valuable but painful exercise.
Absolutely. Did you kind of go through something similar, Nadia?
Yeah. Again, I really just looked at Pinterest. I was thinking about how can I step outside of Google? What other options are there? So, I tried to post on Instagram a little bit, started a YouTube, built an email list, which I didn't have before, anything and everything to just diversify.
Yeah. You guys, there's so many stories like this, and I love this. I knew going into the HCU when I started seeing that people were struggling, I knew that these stories would emerge because food bloggers just kick ass. I mean, they are feisty, they are scrappy, they will do what it takes to make it work, right? And I just knew that this would happen. And I've seen so many stories like yours where, people were kind of skating by like, oh, I'm getting 100,000 sessions a month. This is great. I'm just going to go with this. But after the HCU, they started looking at their business with a different perspective. And like you said, Christina, a more holistic approach. So now they're just crushing it everywhere. Like YouTube channels are going crazy, Instagram accounts are going wild. And now their businesses are more rounded out than ever because they were forced to do that. So, yes, the HCU was painful for many, but it also brought about some more well rounded businesses in our space. So, I'm sorry you guys had to go through that. But is it one of those things, would you say, people are always like, yeah, that was really, really hard and painful, but I'm glad it happened? Or would you say, yes, it was really hard and painful, and I wish it wouldn't have happened?
I'm grateful actually that I went through that experience. It really forced me to slow down, and I think similar to what you were just saying, when I started, I was just after I started to understand SEO a little bit better. I was pumping out posts, relatively quickly for me, and they were ranking within a day or two, and I was getting traffic, but I wasn't thinking about my site as a whole. I wasn't, necessarily connecting things together. And this forced me to really slow down and take a look at my site and really dig into the technical stuff and just to improve my site as a whole. So for that, I am incredibly grateful.
Yeah, I would say the same. Like I would love to think I'm the kind of person who can see around every corner and anticipate every bad thing happening and prevent it. But in reality, I don't know if any of us are, and I'm certainly not. And so I guess I had to get to the point where I said I'd rather be somebody who is resilient and can recover than putting that pressure on myself to say you've got to see around every corner and figure it out before it happens. And so I'm grateful that I went through it, and I'm grateful I didn't hang it up when it got hard. And I think it's taught me, for me, the biggest takeaway for me is that what an ongoing process it is. And that August, when I saw my traffic come back, did not mark the end of anything for me. It really was just the beginning of saying, all right, you found a track that's working for you right now, and your content is better and more useful and more helpful than it's ever been. And the minute that I say that, there are other things I can be learning and applying and implementing that are going to make it even more helpful for my readers. And so I've got to stay on that track and stay focused on how I can serve them.
Do you both feel like you're closer to your businesses than ever before? Like, okay, I've gotten to know Weekday Pescetarian even better, like the best I can possibly know this entity of mine. Do you just feel like super connected to your business?
In like a functional but codependent sort of way, yes. Yes,
Yeah.
but it brings me a lot of joy. And like all of us, when you start building community and you have folks reaching out to you and sending you pictures of fish they bought and saying, oh, I don't think this was the right one, what can I do with this? It's silly, and also I love it so much. And
Yeah.
so having that community, whether it's on Instagram or commenting on my site or sending in contact forms, it's really rewarding.
From my perspective, you two are just so strong, and having endured 11 months and 15 months of uncertainty and probably grueling hard work and confusion, and being tossed around a little bit. I'm so impressed with you guys, and not just you, but everyone who's going through this. And just your positivity too. Just the fact that you're able to say, Google isn't trying to kill me and totally upend my business, and just moving forward past it. So good for you guys. And then I want to end by asking each of you if you have advice for food bloggers who might be going through this, because there are still bloggers going through this. They feel like throwing their blogs into the ocean and running for the hills. So, Nadia, we'll start with you. What would you say to a blogger who's just like, ooh, at the point where you were at the beginning or maybe in the middle of that 15 months?
I will pass along some advice that was given to me, which was to just take a step back, and if you still really enjoy it, continue and give it a little bit of time.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Christina, what about you?
So mine's similar. It's to be curious, not judgmental. And for me, judgment said this shouldn't be happening, or I should have figured this out already. I shouldn't be struggling with this. And curiosity for me looked like, I wonder what people who are succeeding now are doing. I wonder what it looks like for them. I wonder how I could approach this with joy instead of dread. So my goal is and was to stay curious and not in judgment of myself or the situation. And so I hope that would be helpful for folks who are struggling through this right now, like I was.
Beautiful. Beautifully said, both of you. Are there any tangible bits of advice that you would give, like update your about page, focus on EEAT, anything along those lines?
All of the above. Yeah, I mean, I think EEAT strategically was a huge turning point for me, and is what I am focused on most moving into 2025 with all of the blogs on my site, new blogs that I write as well as blogs that I'm rewriting, is how can I show unique expertise. AI can create a lot of well-researched articles. It cannot create firsthand experience. So if I want to succeed and thrive in this current environment, I need to be sharing firsthand experience, not just a well-researched article. So that's kind of what I'm very focused on moving into 2025.
Nadia, do you have anything to add to that? Anything tangible to relay to people?
I mean, I would echo exactly what Christina said. Just with AI being so prevalent, just adding as much of a human touch as possible, and adding a bit of experience wherever you can throughout any of the posts that you're writing.
I think one of the things you said earlier, Nadia, is so important for anyone listening, and that is just focusing on what the user is seeing and seeing your content from a different perspective and adding value wherever you can. I think if you can start there and focus on EEAT and just grit your way through this time, you can do it. I mean, you ladies are proof that you can do it. You can get through a really hard stretch and have Google favor you in the end, right?
Yes,
is there any
exactly.
Yeah. Are there any last little bits? Anything we forgot to mention before we start saying goodbye?
I have created on my site, because I do get a lot of questions now about different tools that I'm using and who I'm listening to. And so I have created on my site a food bloggers resource page that just links out to the folks I'm listening to, and I try to update it on a regular basis. So if people are interested in what I'm listening to, I try to keep it updated.
Awesome. And what URL is that?
I can share it with you.
Okay, we'll have it in the show notes.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Which can be found, good segue, thank you, Christina, at eatblogtalk.com/HCU recovery. So go check that out. We'll have everything we talked about today, and then Christina's link as well. I think that's it. Anything else you guys want to say to end? Share your blogs one last time, just so people can find you easily.
This is Nadia, and simpleandfresh.com.
And Fraiche is spelled?
Fraiche.
Yes. And then Christina, just say your blog one last time.
Christina Jolam with weekdaypescetarian.com.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate your time today.
Thanks, Megan.
Thank you, Megan.
Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this topic, be sure to watch the video shown on the screen. See you next time.